You will see them meet for the first time as they prepare to hammer out a compromise budget agreement. And finally, be with us at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning for a discussion of energy and the environment. That's on Close Up on C-SPAN. And that's a brief look at the schedule ahead this weekend. Next on C-SPAN, we take you to St. Louis and the studios of KSDK-TV for the latest local news from the flooded regions along the Mississippi River and its tributaries. This newscast was broadcast at 5 o'clock Central Time this afternoon. That's 6 o'clock on the East Coast.
At 5 tonight.
A losing battle up and down the Missouri River.
I'm Deanne Lane in Marthasville. It is a painful waiting game for residents here as two nearby levees burst. I'll have that story coming up.
And I'm Ken Jones, live near St. Charles County. The rising Missouri River continues to chase folks from their homes. I'll have the latest in a moment.
And trouble, too, for the thousands trying to hold back the swollen rivers. Nature deals another blow. The story is next.
You're watching Channel 5, KSDK St. Louis, where the news comes first. With Karen Foss, Rick Edlin, Bob Richards, and Mike Bush. This is News Channel 5 at 5.
Again and again, all along the Missouri, dramatic evidence the river is winning and getting stronger. Good evening. I'm Karen Foss.
And I'm Rick Edlund. Our top story in our continuing Floodwatch 93 coverage, the strain is showing as levees all across the metro area give way.
And just a short time ago, near West Alton, a car went off Highway 67 and plunged into about 12 feet of floodwater. It appears that at least one person is dead. We will have more information on this as it becomes available.
Now, earlier today, floodwaters broke through a levee near Dutzow, Missouri. News Channel 5's Deanne Lane is near that break in Marthasville, Missouri, and joins us now live via Skylink 5. Deanne?
Well, Karen and Rick, residents here have actually been hit with a double whammy. Two nearby levees west of here broke early this morning, sending the water into Marthasville. Many of you are familiar with Marthasville if you've traveled the KD Trail. Downtown Marthasville has now been evacuated. In fact, I'm told the water from the levee is coming at about 6 inches an hour. If you can take a look over my shoulder here, you can actually see a current on a local road. That is a local road, and residents here say they have never seen anything like that before. That's how quick the water is moving. Let's take a look at our aerial pictures from early this morning from Chopper 5. This is just outside of Treelore, Missouri. You are now looking at the Treelore levee. It burst about 7:30 this morning. You can see the water gushing out, going into Treelore, Missouri, then making its way to Marthasville. I'm told that very same water will eventually end up in Defiance in St. Charles County. Now, there are other levee concerns at this hour in the St. Charles area, and Sarah Harlow followed that story for us today.
In the race against time, the Missouri River is winning the battle in St. Charles County. The river is flexing its muscle 5 miles north of the city of St. Charles, weakening the levee which so far has protected a good part of the city and county. Even a 2-foot-high wall of sandbags can do little to stop the flow.
The levee and sandbags held back the Missouri until about 6 o'clock this morning. That's when the water started spilling over. The Missouri had risen 2 feet overnight and is expected to rise at least another foot by tomorrow.
As the river continues to rise, wildlife continue to look for dry land to feed.
What they could expect as far as inundation.
At the St. Charles County Emergency Management Agency, members of the Army Corps of Engineers map the overflow.
As long as it's just oozing over, you don't have any erosion. But if you get any head differential between the riverside and this water that's flowing over, then it's going to start eating into the bank on the backside.
One concern is the makeup of the levee. It's grass-covered but made up of a sandy base. It wasn't initially designed to just hold water.
A lot of the levee is made up of the old KD Trail, which is just an old railroad embankment, which in some sections has been improved.
Despite the spillover, late today, volunteers were still sandbagging the levee, trying to strengthen it closer in toward town, hoping they could hold back the river so it can't do any more damage. In St. Charles County, Sarah Harlow, News Channel 5.
And the Missouri River at St. Charles is expected to crest on Monday, but when you think about evacuations, a lot of people are not waiting. Ken Jones is standing by live with that angle. Ken?
That's right, Dee. When the water started rushing over the Missouri River, a lot of area right here in St. Louis County became flooded like a lot of places out here. The farmland you see behind me now covered just about a couple of hours ago. This was pretty much dry land, and that more or less is not the case right now. A lot of houses underwater. Also, as you say, Dee, it forced a lot of evacuations in St. Charles County, several mobile home parks. As a matter of fact, about 2.5 feet of water, even more in some places, are now covering the Missouri Mobile Home Park on Hunting Road just north of St. Charles City. Some residents, of course, fearful of looters, were reluctant to leave. Sheriff deputies had to coax them out of their homes.
We were pretty well prepared. We had a boat and we were going to climb up trees and stuff if it got too high. But it was just time to go, I guess.
Well, about 28 people remain in trailer parks right now, even though the high water is keeping them more or less surrounded like small islands. So far in St. Charles, about 28,000 people have been evacuated due to flooding. Of course, we'll have more on this a little bit later. Back to you, Deanne.
Okay, thank you, Ken. And once again, downtown Marthasville has been evacuated. Karen and Rick, that's the latest from the Missouri River on this angle. Back to you.
Deanne, what about the people there in Marthasville? Were they surprised by the flooding there?
No, actually, as I mentioned earlier, it's been a painful waiting game. They did expect this to happen in 1986. The same levee burst and created a lot of problems for the city. That eventually led to the Katy Trail, ironically. So they did anticipate this and all the problems. They just didn't know when it would happen. And then with last night's rain, it softened the tree-lore levee, and of course the water began making its way into town.
But this is much worse than 86, is it not?
At this point, Rick, no, but it eventually will be. It is coming so quickly. One estimate, again, 6 inches an hour. We showed you how quickly it was moving. It will be as bad as 86 and perhaps worse. At this point, it's just getting there, though. It's going to be a long night.
Sure, well, you can virtually see it happening.
Thanks, Deanne. Well, here in St. Louis, authorities are hoping to hold the line on the floodwaters.
A massive round-the-clock sandbagging effort is underway in the city's evacuation area on the south side. The rising river to Pear has already, of course, forced the evacuation of scores of families, and authorities have a plan in place to broaden that evacuation area. There are no plans at present to order additional families to leave their homes. News Channel 5's Ruth Izell is standing by along the river to Pear, where the number of volunteers has mushroomed. Ruth?
Well, Karen and Rick, there are several hundred volunteers toiling right now filling sandbags, and they're doing a very impressive job, and it's been like this all day long. Now, their goal is to fill 1,400 sandbags an hour around the clock for a grand total of 200,000 by Monday. Now, if current crest predictions hold firm, those sandbags should be enough to hold back the river. As I said, it's a very impressive job that the sandbaggers are doing out here, but there are health risks involved in working in this intense heat and humidity. In fact, some volunteers are literally working themselves sick. This volunteer could barely sit up straight. She was so worn out by the heat. Paramedics checked her out, then escorted her to an air-conditioned bus being used as a cooling station. But the woman collapsed before she could reach it. EMS officials say she's one of a few dozen volunteers who fell victim to heat exhaustion.
It's a combination of the heat, the humidity, and the great exertion required to fill the sandbags and move the sandbags to make a levee. Heat exhaustion can progress into heat stroke if not taken care of. And in heat stroke, the body's body cooling mechanisms stop to work, and the body temperature just rises and rises, eventually causing the cells in the brain to die.
Volunteers are urged to take a break every half hour, drink plenty of fluids, and spend no more than 4 hours total per day on sandbag detail. Even when volunteers know better, their desire to help overcomes their common sense.
I blew it, frankly. I worked 4 straight hours this morning and ended up having to sit in the cooling bus.
I've seen a few people passed out, and you got to be careful in this heat because it's very hot out here. I've been out here since about 9:30. Helping out, so you just got to be careful in the heat, drink plenty of water.
Now, one more word of warning. The very old and the very young infants should stay out of this heat. And authorities say, as grateful as they are for all the volunteers' help, they want to make sure they don't overextend themselves. Reporting live from the south side, Ruth Ezell, News Channel 5.
Good warning.
They have a long, hot job in front of them there.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ruth.
Well, the rivers are rising, the levees are breaking, and new figures show it's only going to get worse.
Chief Meteorologist Bob Richards is in the Weather Center with the latest. Bob.
Karen, Rick, first let me clarify and correct something that Deanne Lane had mentioned a few moments ago about the Missouri River at St. Charles. The crest on the Missouri River at St. Charles will come tomorrow and not Monday. The crest again will come tomorrow in St. Charles, and then after that, thankfully and hopefully, the river will start to recede after tomorrow. On the Mississippi River at St. Louis, new updated figures today because of all the heavy rains we had yesterday over the area have now revised those figures upwards. Along the Mississippi River, take a look at the graphics. Along the Mississippi River at St. Louis, the river continues to rise. 16 feet above flood stage is the forecast crest on Monday or Tuesday of next week. Again, that figure should be Monday or Tuesday of next week. Along the Missouri River, the crest at St. Charles will be 11.5 feet on Saturday. That's on Saturday of this weekend. In Herman and Jefferson City, after brief rises last night and early this morning, the river has started to fall down. And along the Merrimack River, again, the big problem area will be in Arnold, where the river will crest on Monday at 18 feet above flood stage. Again, here in St. Louis, we are well above the old record. We broke that yesterday in St. Louis. The current stage today is at 44.2 feet, and it will crest around 46 feet on the 19th. That should be on Monday. If we had any additional rainfall between now and throughout the weekend, that may alter that figure or even push the crest date even farther. But there is some good news. Looks like most areas are going to start showing signs of drying out, at least from up above. We'll have more on that. A look at Doppler 5 radar and the rest of the two-state forecast coming up.
Thanks, Bob. And President Clinton will get a bird's-eye view of the river as he comes to St. Louis tomorrow. The president will arrive at Lambert a little after 9 in the morning. He'll then board a helicopter for an aerial survey of flooded areas. At 10:30, Mr. Clinton is scheduled to meet at Fox High School for a roundtable discussion with federal, state, and local disaster officials. And the president will leave St. Louis about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He's going to spend the rest of the weekend in Little Rock.
Many St. Louisans are going to spend their weekend at the biggest show in town, watching water rise on the riverfront.
Look at the street light. That was a road down there on the other side of those trees. And the trees. Look at the trees.
Locals and tourists alike are glancing at the arch, then turning their focus to the river. Hundreds of people can be found on the arch grounds to take a look at the flood of '93. The Mississippi has long since reclaimed the Lenore K. Sullivan Boulevard and is now making its way up the steps toward the arch.
And thousands of you have offered to help your neighbors by calling our Volunteer 5 flood relief hotline. 2,000 have called just since Monday, but calls for more volunteers are coming in almost by the hour. You can call our hotline at 969-VOL-5 to learn more about how you might help out. The hotline will be open tonight until 7. It's being staffed this evening by Representatives.